Today is about general impact and general presence. Okay, now some of that will obviously, some speaking and things like that will come into it, but when it comes to presentation skills, you've got behaviour and process, two completely separate things. And actually the process is the easy bit. It's the behaviour that we need to get right. And this is kind of where this bit sits today, this impact and presence. It's a behavioural thing, really. And there are some logical things you can do to help yourself with this. But just stay away from that. We're not talking about strictly presenting today. We're talking about general impact and general presence, if that's okay. Okay, so we'll get started. As always, I've got a bit of a description around this. You know this slide is wordy. I'll read it out to you. Don't worry about this. Remember, you'll get all this on the video channel, the YouTube channel. 7 to 10 day lag, but you'll get it edited all up there. I think we've got over about 120 videos on that now, guys. So if you are one of those people that keeps meaning to go and have a look at it, really go and have a look at it, because there's some really good little bits on there, and the feedback we're getting from the 2 to 5 minute clips is great. Okay, so impact and presence is about paying full attention to and connecting with the feelings of other people in order to inspire them to take a given action. And once you've got a connection, it's about voicing an opinion that, based on logic and analysis, in a clear, concise and compelling manner. Now, for those of you that know me well, that is far too wordy for my liking. But it gives you the overall view of impact and presence. And to be honest, presence leads to impact. So it's almost like there's several things that lead to impact, and presence is one of the things that leads to impact, which we're going to look at, okay? But before we move on from this slide, paying full attention and connecting with the feelings of other people. That's why this is purely not about presentation skills. Okay? Yes, you have to connect with people, build relationships in a presentation, but general impact and presence is when you're walking down a corridor or somebody's talking about you in a business, they go, yeah, well, okay, you know, they're a good guy. God, yeah, when they walk in, you know, don't you? Yeah, in a good light. You hold impact and you have presence in the room. And that can come across in lots of different ways and lots of different personality types. So I've got that to remind you of, because there's not a particularly correct way of having presence, and there's not a particularly wrong way of having presence. It's just going to be different for different personality types, okay, that are in there. But just notice in this phrase here, there's feelings and logic. Okay, feelings and logic, and when it comes to impact, again, people and process. You know, I'll split it out this morning for decision making, and again, it's something that we need to consider. So what we're going to do on the session is this. We're going to look at what you say, how you say it. Okay, so again, this is where it starts to get confused a little bit with presentation skills. So just think that your brains will be trying to think of an instant, you know, an example of where you're doing this, and it might go to a presentation type thing. That's okay, but I'll just have the mindset that this is wider for now, okay? We're going to talk about you, presence, what that is, and then how those four things come together to give you impact, okay? Because impact is a result of these four things, rather than you trying to make impact. We all know what it's like when somebody falsely tries to make impact, okay? Especially in our culture. We think, you know, you can see through it quite quickly. Maybe it comes across a bit cheesy. Maybe it comes across a bit flaky. You can kind of see through it. That's not really, if you choose to try and make impact directly, it doesn't always come off. But if we're doing these things and we know what's happening in these four quadrants, then impact just starts to happen. So it's a result of those four things, okay? So let's have a look at these things. We're going to start with you, as always. We're going to start with the individual. So what we've got here, a picture of you, right? So let's just go through these one at a time. First of all, your values, okay? So this is why it's bigger than presentation skills, okay? If you want true presence and true impact, You need to know what your values are, because people, if you do this properly, people will see what your values are. Okay? And sometimes people don't ask themselves that question. So when I tend to do one-to-one coaching, for argument's sake, and I'm trying to help a person build their, for want of a better word, brand, to help them build their individual brand, one of the first questions I ask is, what are your values? In fact, there's one or two people on this call that I've asked that question to in the past. What are your values? What do you stand for? You know, if somebody's talking about you and behind your back, what are they saying? Because you want them to be saying what your values are. Yeah, so you want that person to be saying, you know, what do you think of John? You know, but by the way, that's not a license to anybody on this call to start telling me what you think of John. But what do you think of John? Well, you know, yeah, he's all right. Yeah, do you know what? He's a good guy. Yeah, he'll deliver for you. Yeah, he'll get it sorted for you. Just have a word with him. You know, whatever your values are, you need to know what they are before you can even think about impact and presence. Because if you don't know what your values are, there's no way in hell somebody else is going to know what your values are. And of course, in addition to knowing what your values are, you've got to live them as well. So you've actually got to make sure you know what your real values are, because that will come through in your conduct for people. Yeah? That will come through. You know, are you a trustworthy person? Are you a person that's solution focused rather than problem focused? People will read that and make a decision of you, and that will then impact whether you make presence or impact with that person. Okay? So I know I'm harping on about this a little while, but I'm doing this on purpose. And if there's one exercise you take away from today, if you've never asked yourself before, what do you stand for? What are your values? And do other people know that? Yeah, and I'm not on about forcibly telling people what your values are. They should see it by the way that you act, by the way that you live your values. But we don't ask this question at school. It's not a question we get asked. What do you stand for? What are your values? Some people might have scribbled stuff on a CV before, trying to explain it maybe, but it's not something that we come across. Okay, so point number one in presence and impact is understand what your values are, what you stand for, because they should then be shown through with all the other stuff that we're going to talk about today in order to give you presence and impact when you either walk in a room or just generally. You know, what do your line, your subordinates, for want of a better word, the people, your reports think about you? What do your bosses think about you? What do your customers and suppliers think about you, and all that type of stuff? Okay, so point number one, values. Point number two on there is personality. So I've got the red, yellow, green, blue. I'm going to throw it up for you in a moment and just talk about impact and presence, because they have it in a different way. Now, some of you would have seen this before, so we can make it a bit interactive, and you can tell me about impact and presence and how different colour profiles will be impactful and have presence in a slightly different way to each other, okay? Because remember, there's not an expert way. There's no one way of being impactful and present, okay? Talent and skills. So we've done values. We'll look at personality in a moment. And we're now looking at talents and skills, okay? So what skills do you have? What talents do you have? Because they will, if you use them properly, they will all show through. So if you are good at analysing things, yes, then if you're sitting in a meeting and people are aware and there's some evidence base around your analytical skills, that will bring presence and impact when something needs analysing. People will look to you as the go-to person, or actually, do you know what? Let's run this by them. Let's just run this by them and get their point of view on it. Yeah? All that type of stuff. So it's understanding what your talents and skills are. To be honest, a lot of this section about you is actually just generally good to do no matter what. Even if you forget impact and presence, because if you can follow this and answer all these questions that I'm going to go through here, I'll tell you what, it'll make a great hell of a resume, for argument's sake. I'm not saying anybody would need one of them, of course, but what I'm saying is if you actually write down, it gives you your brand. If you answer all of these things that I'm going through, it tells you who you are. It gives you the brand of John or the brand of you if you go through this process. And that's generally good to have no matter what. But it's especially good if you're trying to have impact in presence, either in the workplace or in a hobby or whatever it may be. Okay? So understand what your talents and skills are. Okay? Understand the experiences you've had and what they mean and what you've learned from them. And that's quite a key thing here. Everybody's got experiences, but not everybody actually filters out what they've learned from it. So if you can filter out the learning from your experiences, then that tells you how you've changed and morphed as a person from that time. This morning we did decision making, and we talked about potentially making the wrong decisions. And I said, it's okay to make the wrong decisions. I know this is something that Pete talks about, and he likes to empower people. Tell me if I'm wrong here, Pete, but you like to empower people to make decisions. If they make the wrong one, then you'll have their back. If they make the wrong one repeatedly and they're not learning from it, that's a different conversation. I understand that, but people have to make decisions, and sometimes they make the wrong ones. The key is to learn from the experience and not do it again, because if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. We know that, don't we? Yeah. So look back at your experiences. What have I learned? Last night on the TV, the news had about those 2 England players that have been sent home because they got women round into their room while they were on tour. They broke the bubble for coronavirus. They've been sent home. My initial thought was, idiots. What a load of idiots. Why would you do that? You idiot. You don't deserve to be there. And then I'm having a chat with an old school friend this morning, and he kind of said to me, yeah, but you know what? When we were like 18, 19, and if this was going on, do you think we'd not go out? And I thought, do you know what? I didn't care at 18, did I? We were out every night, and would it have stopped us? And, and it just thought, do you know what? It tells me I've learned from some experiences from when I was maybe 18, and maybe I'll do things better or a little bit differently now. But actually, it doesn't. At the time, I wouldn't have made any different decision because I was 18 and didn't know any better. And so those experiences have changed me. They've made me grow. But sometimes I need to maybe not make snap decisions and call people idiots and do X, Y, and Z. And just think back of, hang on a minute, I've got hindsight of 24 odd years since I was 18, 19, 26 years maybe, since I was 18, 19, whereas when you haven't got that, have you? So your experiences, Pete's put very true. No one gets into trouble for making the wrong decision. They do get into trouble for not making one. Well, Pete, this morning, it's a really good point that you raised. This morning when we did decision making, we talked about fight, flight and freeze. And freeze is the bit where people get stuck in rabbits in headlights. And you might have caught the end of that if you caught the last 10 minutes, where people freeze and they don't make a decision. And one of the best learning points I gave out this morning, which we had some great feedback on, was if you're struggling to make a decision, put a date in the diary as when you're going to make that decision by. Yeah, so don't worry about putting a date in of when you're going to action it. When you've made the decision, put a date in of when you're going to make the decision. Because as Pete said there, if you're empowered to make decisions, make the decision. And I know there's other people in it on the course today that doesn't report into Pete. And I know you've got different line managers, you've got different styles, I get that. But likewise, the indecision won't do anything. So make the decision. If you get it wrong, as long as you learn from the experience and put it right, nobody should really, unless it's a life or death situation, nobody should really, you should learn from that and move on. It's more powerful learning from that than actually just never making a decision on the back of it, okay? So experience. The next one is personal motivation, okay? So this is to try and understand what motivates you. Okay, and again, it's a question that's not asked. And for you guys that have done any work with me on SMART goals and things like that, there's 2 forms of motivation: towards motivation and away from motivation. Okay, where I'm standing, they should probably be the arrow should be the way around, shouldn't they? Towards motivation is I do this because there's a benefit for me. So, I play golf because I enjoy it. And I get out, I get some exercise, and so on and so on and so on. Okay, I spend time with my daughters because also that gives me a sense of happiness as well. I like doing this part of my job because that builds my self-esteem, and hopefully I can help some people. So on and so on and so on. Okay, that's what towards motivation is. So it's always good to write down occasionally what makes me happy. Just write it down. All the things in life that make you happy. Hopefully there is nobody on this call. Let's see how many are we up to. Up to 28, okay. Hopefully there's nobody on this call that would struggle with that. But when I've run live courses before, and I've asked people to do this, occasionally people don't write anything, or only write one or two things. And you might argue, is that because they've got nothing in their life that makes them happy? Very occasionally. Or is it the fact they've never asked themselves that question before? And if you've never asked yourself that question before, what makes me happy, then you haven't got a dendrite path in place of happiness. You don't know what makes you happy because you've never asked the question of what makes you happy. We just assume, we get told by media and society what makes you happy. And again, you might be thinking, what's this got to do with presence and impact? Very simply, if you are happy, you are more productive and are at peak performance. So when you are happy, you have peak performance. If you are at peak performance, your presence and impact will be at its best. It's a no-brainer. Okay, so towards motivation, I would urge everybody to not only sit down and write down whatever your values you got, but also what are your skills and talents, what are your major learnings in life, and what makes you happy. Because if you get that into your head, it comes out, it comes across to people. Yeah, what makes you good, what makes you happy, and so on and so on and so on and so on. Yeah, but you've also got away from motivation. Okay, and if you remember, away from motivation is moving away from pain. So you might need to bring a little bit of that in as well. Okay, so, you know, if I go out for a 5-mile run, maybe I have to create a little bit of pain to get me moving off the sofa, but by the time I've done 2 miles, I'm enjoying it again. So I'll beat myself up on the sofa for a bit, cause a bit of pain, and so I actually get outside. Yeah, drag myself out or go to the gym or whatever, and then it'll turn towards motivation. So just bear in mind that away from motivation, sometimes, only a small percentage, where we have to just pinch ourselves to get ourselves moving a bit. Maybe you need to know, what are your away from motivators as well? What is it that just kicks you up the bum when you need it? What is it that gets you out of the chair and takes you running rather than eating the cream cake, for argument's sake? However, cream cakes might make you happy, so it might be on your list anyway, yeah? So, just think of what makes you happy, towards and away from though, okay? Don't forget the away from, because there's 1 or 2 bits that, you know, I'm definitely, when I wake up in the morning, my motivation to go to work is definitely away from. And I love my job, as you guys know. But I love my bed as well. I don't particularly like getting up. That's how bad my self-talk is. I don't particularly like getting up. I'd be moaning if I couldn't get up one day though, wouldn't I? Do you know what I mean? Yeah? So my away from motivation is kind of just leave me alone for 5 minutes when I get up, do my own thing, have a shower, and then the towards motivation starts kicking in to go and do the job. Yeah? So, know what makes you happy. Really important, okay? The next one, ambition. What's your ambition? What do you want out of life? Yeah? What do you want out of your day? Okay? What do you want? Because you might be thinking, John, this has got nothing to do with impact and presence. And it absolutely has. I can't tell you enough. And it's probably the biggest section that we're going to go through today. That you bit. If you know what your ambitions are, you know what you're aiming for every day. Do you know what also it helps with? If you've got your ambitions, your goals set out, if you have a crap day, it's okay. Doesn't move your ambition, doesn't take your goals away. But if your goals are what you're doing today and you have a bad day, then it feels like the whole world's going wrong for you, doesn't it? At that point, yeah? If you've got 6 things to do today and they all go wrong, then you're going to go, everything's going wrong. Notice the word everything there. Everything's going wrong. because I had 6 jobs, they've all gone wrong. Well, not everything's gone wrong. You know, that's everything means everything in the world's going wrong. No, no, no. The 6 things you're working on might have had some problems. Okay, I'll give you that, no problem. But if you know what your ambitions are and your future goals, then they've gone wrong. Tomorrow you can put them right, can't you? Because your ambitions haven't changed, your goals haven't changed. So again, really, really important. It makes you more confident, it gives you more self-esteem, which in turn makes you have better presence, it gives you more impact when you're around people. Yeah? And finally, what you need to do is earn performance currency. Now, a few people have heard me use this term before, performance currency and relationship currency. Relationship we'll come on to in a moment, okay? But performance currency, what that means is people, let's take a business context now, people like you because you work hard. Okay? Because you go to work and aim for peak performance, or 100 foot, for those that we've done all that information on before, people see that you work hard, and other people like people that work hard. It's as simple as that. And what you do, if you do all of this properly, you earn what I call performance currency. It's like you're banking money in an emotional bank account with somebody else. Okay? You're banking money in the emotional bank account. So when, taking out Donald Trump out the equation, because that's just an anomaly, right? When a president goes for a presidential election, or a president-elect goes for a president election, you normally get that whole backstory. They tell you they're a family man. They tell you what their values are. They tell you that they were a Vietnam fighter pilot. They tell you this, they tell you that. And they do it much more in America than they do in the UK, which is why I'm using the example. The whole reason for that is they're trying to build that picture there. Because if you can build all of that picture, when they get on that podium, they've already got presence. And they're already going to make impact. Because it's already set in their mind. So, I suppose what I want you to take from this is presence and impact isn't something you just do. Presentation skills is something you could do, and I said I can do that for you, no problem. But presence and impact is something that you build. And you build it over time. And don't be sitting there thinking, oh God, I've got to start building it now. You've probably been building some of it already. But you might not have done it in such a focused way of doing it, okay? So you need to start earning performance currency, okay? And you can earn performance currency. That's all right, Maggie, thank you for letting me know. You can earn performance currency by doing these things and acting them out in front of people. Of course, as long as those things are helpful and not hindering, which I'm making an assumption you would want these things to be helpful in order for you to be happy on the back of it, okay? So, I might have opened a can of worms with you. I'm not quite sure. If you're expecting to get a few tips on impact and presence, and now I've just kind of gone, you maybe need to sit down over a few days and work all this out about yourself. You may be thinking, oh, John's just given me a load more work. Do it in your own time. Have a cup of tea, glass of wine, pint of beer, whatever. Not too many though, because that changes after a few beers, believe me. Do it in your own time, but start working out what's your brand, because that's what that really is. And if you know what your brand is, it's easier to get impact and presence across the board. Just before we leave this point, okay, I want to just talk about impact when it comes to personality type, okay? Now, many of you have seen this before from me, okay? We've used it in change, we've used it in when I did a session simply on personality types, and so on and so on. For those, if there is anybody new, red, yellow, green, blue, extrovert, red and yellow, introvert, blue and green, okay? Red and blue are logical thinkers, yellow and green are emotional thinkers, okay? I'm not going to do any more on that, okay? But we need to understand how these profiles use impact in a slightly different way. So, go to your chat box, everybody. Let's see how many people have been on previous things that I've done. How would you notice if a high red was making impact? What would be a go-to for a high red profile? What would they try and do? A high red profile if they wanted to have presence and make impact. What do we think? High red profiles. So Pete's put dominate, yeah, so they try to dominate a situation. They try to take the lead. Martin's put talk over everyone. You're right, sometimes, Martin, yes. Noisy like you. Oh, Christine. I don't think you meant noisy. I think you meant loud and interesting, didn't you, Christine? I'm sure that's what you meant. Yeah? Fiona's put take control. So absolutely, they're going to try and make impact by taking the lead, because that's the type of personality that they are. Okay. However, I'm sure you've all seen that done in a bad way as well. So there's always a solution-focused and problem-focused way of doing it. Okay. If a high red does it properly, it gives people confidence. It gives people, it gives them solution-focused thoughts that, okay, it motivates them to go and do something. If it's done wrongly, people just like think, what are they shouting about? Yeah, so that's the difference. Okay. We've now talked about you as a person, and the image or the brand maybe that you want to portray, that is you, that you might need to do some thinking about, and how you live that in order to get presence and impact. This is about now what you say to people, okay? We'll talk about how you say it as well separately, but this is what you say, okay? So think about your key messages that you give out every day, okay? Are those messages solution focused or problem focused that you give people? Because they will take it and start to build your brand in their head. And if you are I've met many people over the life that are perceived as negative, and when they are questioned about it, they will say things like, I'm not negative, I just point out problems. And we all need to point out the problems, otherwise you can't skip over them. Now, I get some of that logic, but there's no point pointing out a problem without having a go at finding a solution. Because otherwise you're just a problem pointer-outerer, for want of a better phrase. And actually, that's really draining on people. And so if you're problem-focused in your mindset, well, that won't work. That's never going to work. Well, they'll never get that to work. Well, then we've tried this before, it's not going to work. If you're saying things like that, if those are your key messages, you won't be earning any performance currency with other people. They'll just see you as the doubter, as the well, that'll never work, as the downside. Now, if you are a type of person that is good spotting problems, but the key messages are, look, I can foresee this problem, but I've had to think about it, and we might want to think about some solutions to get around it. If those are the key messages, then nobody minds problems being pointed out at all whatsoever. And instead of having impact as a problem finder, you have impact as a solution builder. And there is a massive difference between those two things. You know, we all know people that point problems out to people, and it's just not very useful. You know, oh, that won't work. Anyway, have a good day. Yeah, that's not helpful whatsoever. If we can look at a problem, maybe go, look, I'm thinking this might happen. I'm thinking we might have a problem here. But, you know, if we did this, this and this, would that help? Yeah, or actually, is there anything that you can think of that might help this situation? And again, it comes back to earning that performance currency. Because nobody wants a problem seeker. Yeah? Unless there are some solutions or some potential solutions on the back of it. And even if you haven't got this potential solution, you approach it in a solution-focused way so you can involve other people to get the solution, okay? So the first point on this slide is key messages. Think about what your key messages are every day. Yeah? I'm not even on about how you're saying it at the moment. This is just what you say. Yeah? Think about what are your key messages coming in the morning, for argument's sake, if you're in the office, right? Coming in the morning, and people going, you're right, and you go, oh, no, I'm knackered. It's only Tuesday, morning out already. Because if those are your key messages coming out, it not only means that your impact and presence will be negative, it also diminishes the impact and presence you have as well at that point. Because people don't want to go near them. I played golf a few weeks ago, and it's in a networking group, and there's one guy that turns up, right, every week, right, And you can see people don't want to be in his four-ball, right? Because, he was coming the other way, up a fairway, while I was going down the other fairway, and I overheard him. And somebody went, "You're right," and he went, "No, absolutely crap game, can't hit anything, it's an absolute nightmare, I'm like this all the time." And in about 15 seconds, his key messages not only had made sure he was going to play golf crap for the rest of the day himself, but it made me go, thank God I'm not with him. There is no performance currency being built by this guy whatsoever, okay? So just think about it. Sometimes, when people are really struggling with this, I get them to actually write down what they say during the day. I get them to keep a log. Just when you say something to somebody, just write it down. Yeah, I'm tired, I'm worn out, this has not happened, this has happened. Darren's put, we've got a few here now. Darren's put, be aware of the shadow you cast. Absolutely, Darren, yeah, we talked about that, didn't we? You cast the shadow by when you say stuff. Not only does it interfere with your own thinking, but obviously you condition other people around you. Martin's put, that's a very yellow viewpoint. Yeah, it can be, Martin, but think about the messages that we give out, okay? You don't have to be overly sociable as a high yellow to give out good messages. You've just kind of got to do the hindering ones. Yeah, and you can even, I'm not even say don't be honest, because if you come to work and you don't feel great, I'm not on about going, well, I'm fantastic, because people won't believe you anyway if you're not feeling great. But instead of going, well, I feel like crap, your message is, do you know what, I don't feel great today, but I'm going to crack on with it and see what I can get done. Now that's honest, and you don't have to say you're fantastic or you're wonderful or you're whatever it may be, but just take a note of some of the key messages that come out, especially if you want impact and presence. Because if you're doing the hindering thing, you massively reduce the impact, or you massively increase the impact that nobody wants to be around you at that point. Yeah? Whichever way you want to look at it. Okay? But good point. Good point. Problem focused or solution focused, we've talked about. Okay, we talked about that on the last one. Are you going to be problem focused? Also, think about the purpose you say things. What is the purpose that you say things? Why is it useful to tell people you're tired? What's the purpose of that? What are you trying to get from it? Are you trying to get other people to agree and say they're tired so you feel a bit better? Are you trying to tell people so they lay off you a bit and go a bit easy on you on the day? What's the purpose? So think about, I'm not saying there's a right and the wrong purpose here, but just think about, if you have got any hindering things that you say, messages that you give, why are you saying them? What is the purpose of that conversation that you have? Because sometimes I go in and I do this. I go in and my team go, "You're right." I go, "Do you know what? I'm shattered. Didn't sleep properly. I was up till 10 o'clock doing X, Y, and Z." And then afterwards, I think to myself, why did I even say that to them? What was the purpose of me? Do I want them to feel sorry for me? Do I want them to go, "Oh, I'm sure it'll be all right, John"? And maybe there's a bit of that. Maybe high yellows need a bit of that. Somebody need, put your arm around me and love me for a bit. High yellows need a bit of that sometimes. But sometimes I do think to myself, what's the point? Why are you saying these things? Because if you can work out the root cause, you can change what you're saying, if you choose to. So again, just another thought for you, okay? Remember, this is all about impact and presence. So if your messages are problem focused and not solution focused, then you're going to get either the wrong type of impact and presence, or your impact and presence in a good way diminishes on the way, okay? Are you being rational? Are you being structured? Are you giving clarity to people? Yeah, because all these things make sense. All these things are important to help people make sense of what you're doing and what you're saying on the back of it. So, are you being rational? Now, your rational is different to somebody else's, I get that. But generally, are you being rational? Are you being structured? Are you flitting from different things? Yeah? Are you giving clarity? And you might be thinking, why is that important when it comes to impact and presence? There's one word I'm going to give you. Okay? Why is it important to be structured and have clarity if you want to generate impact and presence? One word: consistency. Okay? If you are consistent in your approach, in your behaviours, people can trust you. Yeah? You don't have to tell me, it's a rhetorical question, but what's it like working with somebody that's got inconsistent behaviour? Because you might do. I've certainly worked with him in the past. Yeah? In one job, the FD was the MD's wife, and I used to go in the morning, look through the doorway to where that she was sitting, see what look was on her face, and that would determine what type of day it was going to be. Yeah? She wouldn't even have to speak. Okay? And I'd take one look and go, well, I'm not talking to her about my expenses today. Yeah? Now that inconsistent behaviour meant that our relationship wasn't great, because you can't build trust with inconsistent behaviours. Likewise, if you want impact and presence with people around you, if they trust you, you're 80% of the way there. Pete, I'm not even reading that out, right? Because you're a braver man than me, right? You are a braver man than me. I'm moving on very, very Nicola, you need to be careful as well, because your boss is on. Inconsistency, and we can all, don't get me wrong, I'm not about as general just a mood swing, because we all have them. This is about somebody where you walk in and you go, good morning, and it's a 50-50 coin toss of what they're going to say. Yeah? Is it a good day or is it a bad day? What's going to happen? Yeah? Do we know? Shall we find out when we get in? Yeah? So consistency helps. And if you are structured and give clarity to people, then you can become more consistent and they can trust you quicker, faster, sleeker, and everything else that goes on. Okay? And then, of course, what a lot of people forget, and I've heard people say the opposite of this, is you need to adapt what you're saying to the audience that's in front of you as well. So the amount of people I've come across that say things like this, and I apologise if you're one of them, well, that's just the way I am. People have to take it or leave it. Yeah? Now, if that is your opinion, I am not one to challenge your opinion. That's your opinion, your filing cabinet, off you go. However, if you want impact and presence with different audience types, you can't be like that. Because if I walk into a room full of high reds, I can be high red. If I walk into a room of high yellows and don't say hello, I'm losing impact straight away. If I walk into a team full of high greens and I start shouting and telling everybody what the score's going to be, I start to lose impact straight away. So hopefully you can tell by now, you've got to adapt to the given audience in front of you if you know what their personality type is, of course. You don't need to run a profile to know what people's personality is. Excuse me, let me just turn that off. It's binging my head off. But you can very quickly, by what people are saying, pick up on the type of person they are. Okay? So, that is about what you say. Adapting, have clarity, have structure. Is it rational? What purpose are you saying that thing for? Is it solution focused or is it problem focused on the back of it? And what are your key messages that you send out to the universe every day, to the people around you? Just something to think about. Okay, so we've covered you, and we've covered what you say. Oops. Obviously, the TIA cycle, I'm not spending a long time on this. The what you say comes from here first, if you remember. Thinking, emotions, actions, results. Self-talk, we've done a whole several 2 or 3 sessions on what to say when you talk to yourself. It all starts there. If you still haven't got the book, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself, go and buy it, because that will help you with your messages, okay? I've got another comment, analyse your audience before the show. Yeah, if at all possible, yeah. Sometimes that's not possible, you don't know. You might be in a situation, you find yourself in a situation with people around you and you haven't had time to prep. If it's presentation skills, I would agree with you. And I would say that yes, know your audience before you walk in, because you're going to have better impact and better presence. But sometimes you can't do that, you have to kind of do it on a huff while you're there, okay? So, start with the thinking, because it's going to give you the results out the back of it, right? Okay, how you say things now. So we've looked at you as a person, and we've looked at what you say. Now we're looking at how you say things, okay? And I thought I'd put a microphone, a big, I can't remember what they're called now. It's not a gramophone, is it? What's that? Somebody tell me what one of them is. It's like a microphone? No, it's not called a microphone, is it? I've put one of them there. Megaphone. Thank you, Alison. Yes, I was nearly there, wasn't I? Yeah. I've put one of them there because I'm a high red and a high yellow, and as you guys have quite rightly told me today, I am quite loud, and this is how I say lots of things, isn't it? That doesn't always get interpreted in the right way. Okay, sometimes people think I'm shouting when it's just my normal voice, unfortunately, and so on and so on and so on. So you've got to be careful how you say things to people if you want impact and presence. So, tone of voice is first thing. Again, this is on a presentation skills course. You would talk about body language and tone of voice. You know, when you're an inflection in the voice, when you lower the voice, also the speed of voice. How quickly you're talking. Maybe you want to pause and let people think. Maybe you want to raise your voice to make a point. So just think about the tone of voice and the rhythm. Like I've said, speed it up, slow it down, depending on your audience. You know, if you've got a room full of high greens and blues, if you go at 1,000,000 miles an hour, then I'm not saying they couldn't follow you, because, you know, intelligently they probably could, but they wouldn't want to. They want time to reflect. Whereas a red, you know, they need the speech to be quite quicker because they just want information so they can go and take some action on it. So again, Margaret Thatcher was a great example of developing a way of talking. Yeah, absolutely. Pete, I don't know, you must have, if with that comment, you must have read her the book that she wrote. It's one of the first autobiographies I read, actually, Margaret Thatcher, regardless of what your political stance is, right? She was a woman in power early days and for a long time. And she was very quite impactful, you know. People will remember, you know, this lady's not for turning. You know, just that phrase gives you impact. And she spent a lot of time on working out how to get across to other people. I have a dream. Martin Luther King. Everybody knows, well, to have a certain age, everybody knows I have a dream. Very few people know what the next line is of that speech. But they don't need to know what the next line is, because they knew within those words and the way he said it, he didn't say, right, everybody listen up because I've got a clearly defined goal. He didn't say that, did he? He went, I have a dream. And he used emotion and inflection and tone of voice and to come across. And people knew what he meant. Yeah, he opened his arms, the body language, all that type of stuff, right? Yes, it's presentation skills, I get that. But again, this is about how you say things if you want impact and presence, okay? The expressions that we use, yeah? You can say something and then wink. I mean, we try and do it with emojis, don't we, and text. It's just a nightmare. Sometimes you have a text and you're reading it and you think, you cheeky bloody... And at the end of it, there's a winky face. And you're like, oh, okay. Oh, they're being sarcastic. Oh, okay, I get it. Yeah? And so on and so on and so on. So again, just be careful of the emotion and what it is that you're trying to get across. And if you're worried about this sort of stuff, just learn about it. This stuff can be learnt. You know, read Thatcher, read Luther King. You know, read Barack Obama, read the best speakers, the Dalai Lama. You know, Desmond Tutu is one of the best speakers I have ever seen in my life, okay? Very quietly spoken man, but really used inflection and humour to make massive impact. You know, I was 20 yards away from him when he was speaking, and it was one of the best presentations I have ever seen in my life, but very quietly spoken man. Okay, very, very good. Palais was just as good as well, actually. See, Palais was in the same place I was in at the time, and Gordon Banks. Very, very good. Expression, welcome interaction. Okay, so welcome people's points of view. That also helps with performance currency. Okay, greens, no problem. Yellows, no problem. Blues, you need to ask for it. Reds, you need to ask for it. Okay, so welcome, because it will help with that impact. Oh, they're listening to me. Oh, they're interested in what I've got to say. Brilliant. Adapt the language, like we've said, depending on what you're talking to. When I say what, I mean potentially level of business. So if you're talking to senior leaders rather than brand new leaders, for argument's sake, team leaders, there might be a language change that's in there as well, yeah? And show energy. Okay, now we all show energy in slightly different ways, okay, depending on profile. And some people will remember this. Again, not spending a long time on it because we did a separate section on it. But energy levels, 4 different quadrants. Performance zone, recovery zone, a burnout zone, survival zone. These are the hindering zones. When you're over here, this is where you hear negative self-talk. Okay? When you're over here, this is where you hear positive self-talk, or should I say solution-focused self-talk rather than problem-focused self-talk. Okay, so we want to either be in recovery or we want to be in performance zone. So think about your energy levels when you're trying to make impact. It comes back to looking after you first, remember. Okay? So then we've got presence. Okay? So we've got presence. So all of these so far, presence is the final stage. You can actually work on your presence. You need to be authentic, okay? If you pretend to be something you're not, you get found out, okay? I saw 2-3 days ago, what's the name, President made a speech, what's his, oh God, his name's gone now, my head's really gone today. President, somebody tell me, the President of America, can you believe it's gone? He made a speech, right? Thank you, Trump, thank you very much. And somebody analysed his speech, and there was a lie every 40 seconds in his speech. And you can actually see it happening now, if you watch him. You can see when he's lying. You can see when he's just making stuff up. So you've got to be authentic. That will give you gravitas as well. If you do all the other things we've talked about, it'll give you gravitas. That will then increase your confidence. Okay, and the more confident you get, the more presence you're going to hold on a meeting, on a phone call, on a face-to-face, on an online, whatever it may be, with your team. You're going to hold more presence at that point. Building relationships to a level of trust, which we've talked about. I'll go through very briefly in a moment. Assertiveness. Be assertive in your own way. Okay, that doesn't mean a green's not going to be assertive like a red, and a red's not going to be assertive like a green. But if you know your stuff and you are authentic, it allows you to be assertive in your own way. Okay? And finally, that builds credibility. And if you can build the credibility and trust, it starts to give you presence. The only other thing I want to give you on this is building relationships. This is a relationship scale, if you remember it. Okay? Acknowledge, understand, accept, respect, trust, and bond. These are stages that you have to take people through. You have to, first of all, earn performance currency, and then you have to earn relationship currency by moving them through this. And you might only have half an hour to do this with people. If I turn up to a new set of people that I'm training, I need to get them to a level of trust quite quickly. I might need to do some work on that in the first half an hour of the course, or it might take you months or years to move people through here over time. But if you can get people to the second top layer, the level of trust, you have more presence and you have more impact, because they trust you, so they are more likely to listen to you and take on your opinion, and so on and so on. So performance currency needs to work with relationship currency as well, okay? Those two things will help with presence and success, okay? So, finally then, if you do all of that, and I know I'm just on time here, another 60 seconds, I managed to finish this morning on time. If you do all of that, it leads to impact. And when you get that impact, you start to inspire people. You can influence them more effectively because they are open to your influence at that point. You take responsibility for that impact. That's quite an important point. You take the responsibility for how you are impacting other people around you. Okay? That's what great leaders do, successful people, yeah? Remember, to be successful, you can't really do it on your own, which means you need relationship currency. But to get relationship currency, you've got to have performance currency. So you've got to work hard before you can build great relationships, okay? But then you take responsibility for how you are impacting people around you at the same time. You can learn how to take that responsibility, and you can learn, there are techniques. You can't really learn how to inspire people. It's all of this put together. You can learn some techniques about presenting, things like that, as I've always said. But this is a bit bigger than that, remember. You can learn, build, and adapt. Learn from what you do, build on it, and adapt for the future. Learn, build, adapt. Okay? And that, as they say, I've got apply on the bottom there. I forgot about apply, didn't I? Learn, build, adapt, and apply. And if you follow that mantra and you cover off these sections, you will automatically get more impact.